What's up, guys? Ron Harris here, MD Online Editor. This is actually part 3 of a series I've been doing recently called My Bodybuilding Journey. I decided I needed a better title, more clickbaity title, so you click on it and watch it, because I do want you to watch the videos. On that note, please subscribe to the channel. If you like the video, please hit the like thing. I think it's the thumbs up. Hit that little bell thing. That's your notifications. Turn your notifications on, do all that. So now let's get into it. I previously talked about how I got into bodybuilding, how I started competing in natural shows, and I left off at the last natural show that I did. The last time I competed as a lifetime drug-free bodybuilder was in 1995 at the Ironman Naturally NPC show in Redondo Beach, California, where I took second place. And I took second place to a guy that had previously used steroids. So in my mind, that was pretty much when I made up my mind right there. I was going to use steroids. Didn't know exactly how, when, but I would figure it out. And it did take a little figuring out. Things were tough back in the day. I did have people at the gym that I went to, the World Gym in Pasadena, that used steroids. There was one guy there that did sell, but didn't have the best reputation as far as, you know, the legitimacy of the pucks. There was a lot of bunk gear going around back then, believe it or not. Everyone talks about, you know, how great it was back in the old days. Well, there was also a period where a lot of stuff going around was just bunk. There were no steroids in it, or it was very underdosed. I think the underground scene has gotten much better since. So let's take you to 1996. I worked for a company throughout most of the 90s called American Sports Network. And one of the things that the company did was promote these contests called the Muscle Mania and Fitness America pageants. And our big end of the year shindig was the Fitness America pageant and Muscle Mania every November. And I had spoken with someone who was going to be attending and working with me, coming from out of state to work on the show. Not going to name him, of course, but I needed some steroids. I knew he used them. I knew I had heard that he sold them. So I arranged to get a bottle of Deca. Now, he showed up with a bottle of Deca. This is November 96. Big jug of veterinary Deca from Mexico. And it was 50 milligrams per milliliter. That was the concentration. So just think of that. To get, if you're going to use 400 or 500 milligrams of this stuff a week, you would have to shoot 8 or 9 cc's. Because if it's 50 mgs per mil, a full 3 cc needle would only give you 150 milligrams. So you need more than 2 of those just for the Deca. And didn't have any test for me. So here's what I did. I got that, didn't do anything with it because I knew I wanted to do test and Deca. I knew that was the first cycle I wanted to do. But still, that's the go-to cycle for anybody. That's the basic cycle. The basic cycle for any steroid user, test and Deca. It works for just about anybody. It's just this great combination of androgenic, anabolic. They work synergistically. If you ever had to choose just 2 steroids to use, I would always say test and Deca, test and Deca. In fact, that's what I'm on right now, test and Deca, all these years later. So anyway, got this big jug. He overcharged me. There was a lot of price gouging back then. Like I said, things were different back then. I wasn't that well connected. You'd think I would have been, because I worked on a TV show that, you know, all the pro bodybuilders were on and everything, but I didn't talk to these guys about steroids. I didn't, because all these years I was a natural bodybuilder. I wanted nothing to do with steroids, never planned on using them myself. So I never got connected the way I probably should have if I planned on using steroids. So how did I get my test? Well, the next month I went down to Tijuana with my wife specifically to get some steroids. Of course, we would see the sights. Tijuana is not the most scenic place, but walked into a pharmacia. They had all the veterinary stuff, but what I was looking for, it was Sustanon 250 called Ready-Jects. So what these were, they sold them already in the syringe, in the needle, and then you had to assemble it, but it was already preloaded. It was already in the needle. You just had to take off the syringe, take the needle portion, screw it on, and boom, there's your shot. What I did not realize at the time was that most people didn't use the syringe. The needle that came with it was 18 gauge. So if you know anything about needles, the higher the number, the smaller the thinner the needle. The higher the number, the bigger, the thicker the needle, and the bigger hole that it leaves. 18 gauge is enormous. Looking at it now, we call them harpoons. And I didn't realize, it didn't occur to me that maybe I could have swapped it out with a smaller size needle head. I was an idiot. But anyway, the good thing was these were made by Organon, a legitimate pharmaceutical company. They weren't fake. I think they were like $5 or $10 each. I can't remember what it cost. Doesn't even matter. But I got 10 or 12 of them. I think I got 12. And we smuggled them back over the border, shitting bricks the whole time. I think I had my wife do it in a cooler or something. Anyway, got it back. You know, I lived in San Gabriel Valley. We were up, so this is about 100 miles away to go from this part of LA County down to past San Diego to Mexican border and back. Anyway, had my drugs. So it was December of 1996, probably a little before Christmas, if my memory serves correctly. I'm 27 years old. I turned 27 back in September. I had been training since I was 14. So I had a good 13 years of training behind me already. I had already made really good gains. I was very, very strong in a lot of lifts, very strong on pretty much anything for legs, squats, leg press, hack squats, could stack out any leg extension or leg curl, sometimes pinning extra plates on. I was already squatting 405 for good sets of 10. Never was a great bench presser, but the strength isn't that important. My strength did go up dramatically in things like the squat. But so here's what I did. I said my first cycle is going to be, did I want to do one a week? So I think I got 12 of these Ready Jecks, these Sustanon 250s. And my first cycle was 2 of those a week. I think I would do one on Monday and one on Thursday. And I think I did 400 milligrams of the Deca, which required 8 cc's. So I had to keep loading up the pins on those. And again, I was a moron. What I should have done when I was loading syringes, and I didn't figure this out for years. This is how naive and dumb I was, and how I didn't talk to other steroid users like I should have. And there was the internet was just dawning back then. There was barely an internet. What I should have done is gotten a bigger gauge needle to draw out the Deca and then replaced it with a smaller needle to inject. Instead, I used the same needle that I was going to inject in my body, which was like, I think I was always using like 22 gauge was my go-to for many years. And I would sit there trying to draw it out of the bottles and through the rubber stopper. And it was miserable. It would take so long. I remember later, I used to load up syringes to have, at one point I used to load them up for like a couple weeks ahead of time, just because I was OCD, and I'd be there for a couple hours, just patiently waiting for that little drops to come out of the bottle into the syringe. Anyway, so this is my first cycle, 500 milligrams of test from Sustanon, which was a blend, as you know, of 4 different esters. I believe it's propionate, cypionate, enanthate, and decanoate. I don't know. It doesn't even matter. There's 4 different esters, all the way from propionate, which is very fast acting, to undecanate, which is very long acting. So the propionate would hit you pretty fast. You'd feel that within a couple days. And of course, it would be gone in a couple of days out of your system. But you had all these other esters in that blend to sustain the release. That's why it was called Sustanon. It was a slow release, very, very evenly released version of testosterone. So 500 milligrams of test and 400 milligrams of Deca. And I'm pretty sure I did it for 8 weeks. Yeah, it was just an 8-week cycle, because I think I bought 16 of those. Yeah, I'm sorry if I don't remember everything exactly, guys. I really wish I had made notes, like detailed notes, and kept them on my cycles. I never did. I wish I had. So did the first shots, took probably about a week before I really started to notice anything. And then I started putting on weight. And of course, immediately, this was not muscle weight, even though I thought it was. Most of what I was putting on was just water retention, because Deca will make you hold water, test will make you hold water. What I will say is that this was my virgin cycle. It was my very first cycle. And like most people, this is where I got my best results. I never got results quite that dramatically ever again. So within a month, I was up about 15 pounds. How much of that was muscle? Who knows? Who knows? But I was up about 15 pounds. I was psyched. I looked on the scale and I was like, yes. Because I want to say I started at about 215 and I ended up putting on about 15, 20 pounds. I got to about 230, 235, mostly water. I'm sure I did put on a good amount of muscle. I'm sure I put on somewhere between 5 and 10 pounds of pure muscle in those 8 weeks, which, being lifetime drug free, I was close to maxed out. I'm sure I could have put on more muscle naturally. Had I kept going naturally, it would have been very slow going. It would have been like a pound or two a year at that point. So let's say I put on 10 pounds from that first cycle, and my strength went up, like I said, dramatically in certain things. My squat went up a lot. I went from 4 plates to 5 plates for like 10 or 12 reps within the space of about 4 to 6 weeks, which that's a big leap in strength for somebody that's already pretty strong. And so what I did after that cycle was done, I said, okay, I'm going to go off. I had planned on only doing 1 cycle. Like I said, best laid plans of mice and men. Didn't end up being that way. Soon as I saw these results, how big I was getting, how much stronger I was getting, it was really just a fuller look to the muscles. They looked fuller, like they were full of water or air or something. They had expanded. It was a fuller look, and I liked that. I was like, yes. And I'm thinking, maybe I'll just do 1 more cycle, right? Yeah, this is how it goes, guys. This is how it keeps you hooked. So I said, I'm going to stay off for 8 weeks. So what was my PCT? There was no PCT. I didn't know about PCT, and it's fine because PCT helps you get back to normal quicker, but you're going to get, as long as you're still young and you haven't done a lot of cycles, you're going to get back to normal anyway. So I gave myself 8 weeks. I think I had a bit of a crash, just a bit of a crash where like maybe my sex drive was down. I lost a little bit of strength and size, not a whole lot, because, I'm on DECA and these long acting tests. So being off 8 weeks, I wasn't really off 8 weeks like I thought. So from the last shot, it probably took a good 4 weeks for all that shit to get out of my system. So maybe I was really only off 4 weeks before I started up again. And I think it was test and DECA again. Test and DECA was my cycle for the whole first year I was on steroids. That's what I just kept doing over and over. Test and DECA, test and DECA. Nobody was using Tren back then. There were other drugs around, of course. I didn't want to take pills. I had heard that they were bad for your liver. And my dad had died of cancer 10 years before this. And part of it was in his liver. Anyway, I was slightly health conscious, put it that way. So I waited 8 weeks and then I went back on again. Needless to say, I cycled on and off. And on July 4th of 1997, I did my first contest on steroids. So this contest was the Muscle Beach show. Like I said in my last video, Muscle Beach, Venice. They used to put on shows 3 times a year. Here's my dog. Every Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day, they would have a contest right there on the beach, on that platform by the outdoor weight pit, the outdoor gym that they have there. It was free to the public. I think they charged us like $10 to enter. You didn't have to join any organization. It was put on by the City of Los Angeles Parks and Recreation Department. And the odd thing was I had competed in 95, one of my last natural shows in Las Vegas at an Ironman Naturally in Las Vegas. I had gone out as a warm-up for the one in Redondo Beach, which was going to be my main one because I lived in the LA area and that's everyone I knew was going to be at that show. Anyway, I took second in the light heavies at that show in 95 to my chiropractor, Rich Sage. And then I took second to him again in 1997 at the July 4th Muscle Beach Venice show they called it super heavyweight. They had their own weight classes for this that did not correspond at all to the NPC weight classes. Anything over, I think it was 187 or 189, some random number. That was a super heavyweight. I think heavyweight was like 178. So the weight classes, they don't make sense if I explain it to you, if you're used to talking about NPC weight classes. Anyway, I ended up taking second. I was 205 pounds. Big and full, man. My chest, my traps, shoulders were enormous, quads were enormous. My condition, not that great. I did not diet hard for that show at all. I got caught up in this thing where I was getting bigger and fuller and veinier, and I thought that was condition. And I look at the pictures now, and I had the big moon. I had like a Deca face. That's all I used again was testing Deca for that show. Didn't know any better. Didn't really talk to anybody about a contest prep cycle, nothing like that. But man, I was big and full. If I was 205 at that show, I probably would have been in really good condition around 190, 195, somewhere between 190 and 195, which was still a huge leap from in 95 at my last drug tested show, my last natural show. I had been 181 in pretty decent shape, pretty lean. Didn't have striated glutes or anything, but I was pretty close. Everything from the front was super lean. My back was really lean and tight. Glutes and hams could have been tighter for sure. But that was my first show on drugs. It was the 1997 July 4th show on Muscle Beach, and I took second place. And I think I did one more cycle that year, 97. And then I took off all of 98 from drugs. At that point, I was planning on staying natural for life again. And, eventually hitting an NPC tested show where the rules stipulated you only had to be off drugs for 1 year. I was not going to try to go into a natural show on drugs. But I knew that if I could build up enough muscle and retain a good portion of it, I'd be better off in my next quote unquote natural show, because I would have more muscle than I had before. Even if I had been off drugs for over a year, as I was supposed to be, I would still be retaining more muscle built with the drugs, if that makes any sense. So I took all of 98 off from drugs, trained naturally all year. 99, I didn't use any drugs until I was working for a guy, and he offered to give me some steroids. I'm not saying who I worked for. It wasn't my boss. It wasn't the TV. It was another job. I was doing something different. I was training at this point, personal training. I left toward the summer of 98, I left the TV production job, and I went to personal training for about a year and a half. So I had the opportunity to do a couple photo shoots, one with Ironman Magazine, actually two with Ironman Magazine. One was going to be in the studio with Mike Nevue. He had the studio in Gardena, California, with all the props and the fake weights and the gym. I would do that, the one photo shoot there, and then I would do another photo shoot for Ironman at Gold's Venice with a guy named Jerry Frederick, who used to do these. It'd be like a one-page deal. Usually they did it in like sepia tone. It was really cool. I can't remember what they called it, but it was like, raw, real. He would shoot you as you're actually training. And Jerry was a great photographer. I don't know if he's still alive. He used to shoot for Life magazine before he got into bodybuilding. He was really, really good photographer, soft-spoken, gentle guy. Yeah, I don't know if he's alive anymore. I wonder if he is. So that, and a buddy that I had worked with, he had been a producer for the American Muscle Show. I'd worked with him on the TV production job for years. Tim was going to shoot some videos for Valio. Valio made the belts, as some of you might know, some of you don't, of course. Valio made belts, but they also made gloves, and they tried to make protein bars. So this was going to be for the weight gloves. Yeah. So I said, I'll get on a little gear for this. Plus, I was turning 30 in September of 1999. I said, let me get in really good shape just for my 30th birthday and for these photo shoots and that commercial shoot. And so I did. And he did give me some different drugs. What I remember most was, I wish I could remember exactly what drugs. I'm pretty sure I was on a little bit of test. And he gave me this D-ball called Reforvit B. This was an injectable D-ball, but he told me I could drink it. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I don't have to shoot it. Great. Just one shot. I think I was just doing test and D-ball for this. Yeah, I wasn't that savvy. I hope you're getting the idea now that I was not very sophisticated with my steroid use in the early years at all. There wasn't a lot of info out there, and I didn't seek it out. I should have conferred with some people that really knew more about it, but I didn't. I was just talking to guys at my gym. So anyway, I was drinking this freaking D-ball out of, I would draw it out with a syringe from the bottle. It was veterinary. It was like, I think it was 50 mgs per mil also, which was fine because that's all I wanted to use a day was 50 milligrams. Maybe it was 25 milligrams. I don't know. Some of you guys out there might remember this thing. It was called Reforvit B. Had pictures like all these veterinary drugs. They had like little pictures of, a cow, a goat, a chicken, or whatever. They had little animal pictures on the bottle. So I got in shape for that. I dieted. It's the only time I ever got into pretty damn close to contest condition without actually competing. Yeah, I still have some of those pictures from that. And that was, so we've already really covered more than my first year on steroids. So I think it's safe to say I made at least half of all the gains I ever made on steroids in that first year, as far as putting on additional muscle mass beyond what I had built naturally. Like I said, your first few cycles, especially your first cycle, but your first few cycles, the steroids are such a new thing to your body, to your system. Your receptors are fresh. I don't know if that's just bro science, but I can tell you that I never got results quite the same way again. I can remember even up until 2002, so that would be a few years into using steroids, I still remember things like getting such crazy pumps training shoulders that I couldn't lift my arms for a few minutes. I had to stop and just walk around the gym or sit and wait for the pump to go down a little bit before I could do anything, because I was so pumped I literally couldn't move. It's not like that anymore. I'm 52. I've done, I don't know how many cycles I've done, guys. I mean, it's been pretty steady. Now I'm never off. I'm always on at least, I call it TRT plus, because if I say TRT, it's not accurate, because I never go below 400 milligrams a week. I should say 400 milligrams every 8 days. I would do 200, my TRT, and I use the quotes because this is more than TRT. It's what I use to look and feel my best, is 200 milligrams every 4th day of test cypionate. And that's more than a doctor would ever give you for TRT. And my levels are up. They're up over 1,000. I need to get some blood work done again soon, but my blood work is fine doing that. And then when I blast, I throw in, actually, I should say I use DECA. I use DECA pretty regularly, just like 200 milligrams a week. Same thing, like 100 milligrams every 4th day, along with that 200 milligrams of test. And when I blast, I'll throw in some tren or something. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into all that. You guys, I'm sure you're going to ask in the questions, and I don't like to go into crazy detail on what I use, because it doesn't matter what I use. You could use more or less and look better or worse. It's not a real formula. People expect it to be, if you use this drug and this amount, you're going to look like this. It doesn't work that way. We all have different genetics. Some of you have much worse genetics than me, and you'll never look as good as me. Some of you have much better genetics than me, and I could never look as good as you. We're all different, guys. It's a spectrum of genetic gifts for bodybuilding. And there's also a certain truth to the fact that some of us respond a lot better. Some people can respond very well to smaller amounts of steroids and other PEDs. Other people can use tons, and they just get mostly side effects. They don't get much bigger. They don't ever look like a bodybuilder. And I used to see these people that I knew and say, what a waste of perfectly good steroids. And, I've used more than some people I know that looked way better than me. And there are guys who've never used steroids that looked way better than I ever did. They just had way better genetics. So it's not a formula. It's not as cut and dried as a lot of people would want it to be, or they would assume it to be. But that was my first year on steroids, guys. I did several cycles of test and DECA. I would go on, usually my cycles that first year were 8 weeks. I would go on for 8 weeks, take 8 weeks off, and then go back again. And that's how I did it for a long time. For the first few years, I would take, my off time would be at least as long as my on time. Sometimes I would extend it further. A lot of times I would. So if I was on for 12 weeks, I would go off for 12 to 16 weeks, sometimes even longer, to let everything come back to normal. And that worked for me. So I started steroids at age 27, and not until I was about 39, might have been 40, did I realize that my test production was not coming back when I would go off. So what happened was, so this was 30, I'm trying to be accurate with you guys, so forgive me if my memory's not that great. But 2006, when I was earlier in the year, I was 36 still. I went off and I took off from then until I did a natural show in 2007 in the summer. So it was over a year. And then I wanted to see, are my own levels going to come back? So there I'm 37, almost 38. Yeah. So I think I was about 38. That sounds about right. When I realized my testosterone levels were never coming back. And then I went to see a doctor, a very famous doctor, Abraham Morgentaler, Morganthaler. Google him because he actually wrote a couple of very well-known books on TRT. And he actually he was one of the first people, maybe the first, to dispel the myth that TRT would lead to prostate cancer, because he looked back at the studies where people were basing that information on. They were very flawed. He's done a lot of research. He teaches at Harvard Medical School. He had a clinic, still has a clinic called Men's Health Boston. And that's where I went. I was a patient of his for a couple of years. So, and I've been on, ever since then, I've been on steadily. And here I am, 52 years old. So that was my first year on steroids, guys. Hope it was interesting to listen to. That was my experience. I did make the best gains in that year that I ever made in any year on gear since. And I think that's how it is for just about everybody. It's such a shock to your system. It's so new. And I was still so young and my joints were in great shape back then. I still would have, issues every now and then with the shoulder, but they would get better quick. When I got injured back then, the injuries would feel better very, very quickly, as opposed to now. Forget about it. Yeah, and so I was able to make some very good gains because I was still very, very strong. Joints were in good shape. Training was just crazy back then. I had so much passion, enthusiasm. I still do. I just can't do what my body doesn't always do what my mind would like it to, if that makes any sense. Anyway, appreciate you guys watching this. Hope you enjoyed it. Entertaining and all that. And again, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and do all that stuff. Appreciate you guys watching so much. If you decide to use steroids yourself, please, guys, do a lot of research. Don't be naive and stupid like I was. There was very little information out there back then. Now there's so much information. You can give yourself a great education just with Googling things, watching a lot of YouTube videos. I know it's a lot of info out there to process, but take your time, do your research, learn a lot about it, learn about the different drugs, how they're used, and make the right choices. Stay healthy, get your blood work done, get your get your heart scans done, especially if you're over the age of 40. Just be safe about it, be smart about it, because you can do it for many, many years if you practice moderation and you keep a really good eye on your health markers and your blood work and all that good stuff. So appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.